We're now going to move on to our third unit, which is rallying from 18 feet. Three, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, which is at the service line in a tennis court, but you could pace it out on a racquetball court or a tennis court. So you could be rallying against the wall or rallying with an opponent who is also 18 feet on the other side of the net. And obviously from this distance, we're going to need to make our swing bigger. And also, as the distance increases, we're going to need, this is another technical point, we're going to need a little bit more body involvement. So instead of just our shoulder working on a stable platform, we're going to need, from a sitting position, we're going to need a little bit of hip and upper body rotation. And that will also serve, that will help keep that hitting zone, keep the head of the racket moving towards the target. And it would be the same on the backhand, a little bit more rotation as the distance increases. Okay, so we've covered the importance of the grip, using mostly the shoulder, keeping the arm fairly firm, and then at this third unit, introducing the idea of hitting from a sitting position with a little bit of body rotation. A swing length, depending on the ball you're using, you can see here, I'm using a 1 to a 3. 1 to 3. 1 to 3 on the backhand. 1 to 3. 1 to 3. It's also at this point, depending on the sport that you're in, that you may want to introduce some of the specifics of the particular sport. So, for example, at this distance in squash, it might be a good time to introduce the fact that in squash, most of the balls are played with a slightly open racket face. And with a slightly open racket face and a level swing, what you're going to get is a little bit of slice on the ball. So this is an opportunity to teach the players about slice and an open racket face. So in squash, we have this slight cutting action as we're playing the ball. And again, this could be done solo or it could be done in pairs. In racquetball, we don't really need to cut the ball that much. So we actually want to hit the ball a little bit flatter, whether you're playing American racquetball or British racquetball. British racquetball, a lot of players just use plain squash techniques, so they would cut the ball a bit. In American racquetball, because we're aiming usually lower, we want a flatter face. So at this point in American racquetball, some players, some coaches introduce the idea of changing the grip. So instead of having a grip which produces an open face, rotate the racket in the hand so that the knuckle of the index finger is now on the side of the racket, and that produces a flat face. The same on the backhand if I'm hitting in the other direction. You can see that our universal continental grip gives a slightly open face at impact. So at the start of my swing, I need to change the grip so that the face at impact is flatter. Okay, everyone see that? There's the continental grip. Face is open. Change the grip before I start the forward swing so that the face is flat. So at this distance in American racquetball, you could introduce the idea of changing the grip, having the knuckle of the index finger on the side of the racket for the forehand and on the top of the racket for the backhand. And those would more or less be equivalent to the tennis forehand and backhand Eastern grip. So it would look like this. And in racquetball, the grip change would be made as soon as the player knows it's a forehand. They would just slide their hand over, and the backhand, the racket is fairly light. In tennis, at this distance would also be the opportunity to introduce grip change. So, and the grips, for beginners, you would probably start with an Eastern forehand tennis grip, which would look like this. Knuckle on the side of the racket, and for the backhand, the knuckle would be on the top of the racket. Backhand. And a little tip for the backhand, if you lay the racket across your body, it's easier to put your hand down and have the knuckle on top of the racket. Now in tennis, because the adult racket is a little bit heavier, the grip change is usually made by holding the throat of the racket with the left hand and then changing the grip. Also at this time, it would be a great idea for tennis to introduce the idea of a little bit of topspin on the stroke. Topspin is created when the racket starts below the ball, brushes up the back of the ball, sending the ball rotating forward, and then finishes above the ball. So this low to high brushing motion. And if I'm heading in that direction on the backhand, it would be the same. I would make the grip change by holding onto the throat of the racket with my non-hitting hand. Let the knuckle rotate on top, start below the height of the oncoming ball, swing slightly upwards, contacting the ball with a flat face, brushing up the back of the ball and finishing above the ball. So a lot of topspin, racket below the waist, finish above the waist. So tennis would look a bit more like this. Again, a little bit of body rotation. So 1 to 3. 1 to 3. And I would encourage the players, or encourage you to teach your players one-handed strokes at the beginning, so that then later they have the option of adding in a second hand, if at all possible. So we've seen the 3 different units. You're now 18 feet. Your players can rally consistently on the forehand, consistently on the backhand, by themselves, and with a partner. They can switch forehands and backhands. They've got a reasonably good grip, they've got reasonably good stroking fundamentals, and now we're ready to let them loose into the real world. Join a squash club, join a racquetball club, join a badminton club, join a tennis club, and or you've given them a great tool to play by themselves or with their friends. In the simplest possible scenario, 2 friends that buy a racquetball racket at Walmart for less than $20. Ideally, they try and get a hold of a British racquetball, if at all possible. Otherwise, they might have to use a real racquetball, which is a lot bouncier. They find a schoolyard, and they just mark out with a piece of chalk a one-wall racquetball court. And if you go online, the outside racquetball, if you Google one-wall racquetball, you'll find rules to mark out a court dimensions for one-wall racquetball. And that could be a great game at the advanced level. Very challenging with a British racquetball or with an American racquetball. So if you really want to help your students, use a progressive approach. Use the 3 different variables, the most important of which is the ball. And then you also have the racket size, and we're recommending using a racket, ball racket. And you've also got the distance, and then you've also got your swing length. And it's only as you're approaching full court dimensions that you need to introduce grip changes and the ideas of different spins on the ball using more body movement. So good luck with your students.